Welcome everyone. Today I have an exciting tutorial for you on deploying a Django application using AWS Elastic Beanstalk. We'll not only cover the basic deployment process, but also dive into the advanced technical blueprint deployment. So if you're ready to take your Django projects to the next level, you're in the right place. Django is a powerful web framework written in Python, and AWS Elastic Beanstalk is a scalable platform that basically simplifies the development of your applications. And by combining Elastic Beanstalk and Django, you can easily deploy and manage your applications to the cloud without having to provision your servers. So our main objective today is basically for us to deploy a Django application to Elastic Beanstalk, how to set up the resources, and basically how to set up your environments also. So what sets this tutorial apart is that we're also going to be focusing on blueprint deployment. This deployment strategy allows you to basically minimize downtime. You get to reduce the risk associated with your web application updates. So I'm going to walk you through the process of setting up different environments and also how to seamlessly swap between the two environments you set up. So before we begin, it's essential for you to have a basic understanding of Django and AWS, and familiarity with like Python and the AWS Management Console would be very beneficial to you. But if you're new, I'm going to explain these things along the way. So without further ado, let's get started. So first, you're going to for someone who has not used AWS Management Console before, you need the AWS CLI. So you can go to aws.amazon.com/CLI to get the CLI tool. And once you do that, you need to run a command. And I think that command is AWS configure. AWS configure kind of like sets up your application, your AWS environment. Okay, there's the PDF, there's the guide here. If I check AWS configure, and yeah, definitely. So basically, you would need to run AWS configure. This is basically what it's going to look like. So that's just that. And once you're done installing that, you need to install the EBCLI, the setup scripts. I would recommend using the setup scripts, or probably you can use Python installation, anyone that works best for you. Now, to get your access keys and secret access keys, you would need to get that from the AWS IAM. So you need to create a user and you need to create your access keys. So in my console, I've created a user. So basically all commands I'm running basically are using my users, the user I created right now. So um, I'm gonna go here. So I basically have two users. So I think this is the guy I'm using here. So yes, you would need to define your permissions. So you would go to the secret credentials and you would need to create some access keys here. I basically have two access keys. So you can also add SSH public keys for code commit for geek credentials. So you might need to manage all your keys and certificates in the IAM. So that's basically why you do that. So let's get started. So there's a guide on the Elastic Beanstalk documentation on how to deploy to Django. I'm going to be making some little references to this, but not all the time because we're basically going to be performing a blue-green deployment. So let's get started. So I have my application here. The name of my application is demo app. I've I've declared my files here, my wsgi.py, my urls.py. I have an app called paper.urls, and it basically returns a JSON response with a message that says hello world. And I've included the app in my settings. Now, just to be sure that our app is up and running, I'm just going to run python manage.py run server. And yes, we have unapplied migrations, so I'm going to go to localhost. localhost, localhost 8000. Yes, message hello world. So I guess that works now. So first, we're going to be creating the files required. So first, I would want to add my requirement outline pip install. Sorry, that will be pip freeze requirements dot txt requirements.txt. Now, when we're trying to deploy, there's some issues where people make grammatical errors in terms of spelling, so you might need to pay more attention to how you spell things, otherwise you're going to run into some problems. So we have all our dependencies in our virtual environment. So the Elastic Beanstalk recommends us using a virtual environment. So I'm using the virtual env to for this environment. So here's what we have: pprease, hgref, Django, scale pass, and now. Now, to deploy to Elastic Beanstalk, we're going to need to create a folder called eb extensions. So I'm going to make directory, make dir.eb extend, I think extensions, eb extensions. Okay, I think this is spelled wrongly. eb extensions. So I said earlier that we will need to pay attention to spellings. You you should not get this wrong, otherwise you're going to have problems. You're going to run into problems. So EB extensions. Now now that we have our .eb extensions, we're going to create a file called Django.config. Now, have Django.config basically is going to contain configuration files for Elastic Beanstalk. You could add more things to your Django.config. So I'm going to reference the documentation, and there is a code we're supposed to paste in. Okay, we're supposed to paste this configuration in our Django.config. So what this does is basically it specifies a WSGI application file. So this points to ebdjango.wsgi application. So I do not have an application called ebdjango. So the name of my app is demo. So demo.wsgi.py. So in complex project settings, you might be using cookie cutter, you might be using any other template. So you need to basically specify where your WSGI application is, depending on whether you're running a staging or a production environment. So that's kind of up to you. So demo.wsgi demo.wsgi.application. So I think now that we have that, we can get started. So um, now Elastic Beanstalk basically allows us to work with Git. So I'm going to be using Elastic Beanstalk with Git. So I basically want to create a new Git directory, Git init, Git add dot. So I'm basically going to stage all my files now. I'm using Git add dot. So Git commit um, hello first files. Yes, okay, that since oh okay, I guess I did not create a git ignore. That's fine. So now I'm going to be running some commands. So the first command I'm supposed to be running should be eb init, and I would want to specify our Python version when running eb init. So eb init Python 3.7 Django tutorial. So the name of our app is demo. So I'm going to call this demo app. So I do not want to use the Python 3.7 runtime. I want to use the Python 3.9 runtime. So I'm going to specify eb init Python 3.9 demo app, and I guess my application is going to yes. Then yes, as you can see here, I have a new folder created, and the name of the folder is Elastic Beanstalk, and with our config.yml. So it specifies our branch default. So working with a master branch, a global demo app, EC2 key name. I'm not creating a key pair, our default region. You need to pay attention to this region, because this region is basically where your Elastic Beanstalk application is going to be present. And if you end up checking US West 1, you're not going to find your application there because the default region is US West 2, so you're supposed to check US West 2. So I guess if I go to the Elastic Beanstalk Management Console now and I go under Applications, I should see my app. Yes. So now that I basically have my app, I'm going to be creating some environment. So now, like I said earlier, we're going to be working with two types of deployments, which are blue-green deployments. So I'm going to be creating two environments. So the first is going to be EB create, right? EB create staging. So EB create and the name of the environment you want. Okay, let me start with EB create production. So what this is going to do is it's going to run the EB create production command, and it's going to start archiving our applications and all our application files. So with this, we we basically have our application created. An archive is created and stored in an S3 bucket in US West 2. I guess US West 2 should be Oregon. Yeah, so I guess that's correct. So we basically have our application archive stored in US West 2. So I'm going to be creating two environments here, EB create production, and I'm going to also be creating EB create, I think I might call that review or staging. So I'm going to pause the video right now because creating your environment is something that takes quite a little amount of time, maybe 5 minutes. So it might take maybe 10 minutes or less in creating my Elastic Beanstalk environment. So let's just wait a bit. Okay guys, welcome back. So we've created our environment. So I basically created two environments. So successfully launched environment production, and I also created another environment called staging. So we can basically I think if we go over here and I refresh my management console, you can see that I basically have two environments, which are the production and staging environment. So I'm going to run EB status. So what EB status is going to do is basically going to tell us the our environment details. So now I'm not going to I'm not going to launch our application right now. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to take the scene and I'm going to add this to our allowed hosts. Otherwise, we're not good. Otherwise, our application is not going to run. So I'm going to go to the I think I think that should be in the settings for by. So we're going to take this here. We're going to be copying this. Yes, and I think Control Shift C, and with this we can add this here. And also, if you recall, we created two environments. That's the production and staging. So if I need to get the status of the staging environment, I could just do EB status. I include the environment name. So um, EB status staging. So this basically gives me the environment details for staging. So you can see the region, the environment ID, the platform detail. I'm also going to take this and I'll keep this here. And I'm going to do this now. Great. Now, there's something I kind of want to make note of. I said we're going to be working with Elastic Beanstalk and we're also going to be using Git. So this is one of the reasons I'm not necessarily referencing the documentation very much because we're taking a very different approach. So git add dot, and I'm going to do git commit, and I'm going to create a commit message that says git commit name updated host. So now to deploy our changes to Elastic Beanstalk, I'm going to do something called eb deploy, um, eb deploy staged. Now, when we are deploying to Elastic Beanstalk, we're going to be deploying this version. So once we load our application, we basically get the message hello world. So EB deployed staged. And I think I should also specify the name of the environment, since we basically have two. In some applications we have multiple environments. So this basically says, okay, take our changes staged on our Git repository to Elastic Beanstalk, deploy these changes to the environment named production. So I'm going to run this command called eb deploy production staged, and this basically creates a new application archive, or should I call it a new application revision. And basically this updates our environment with the changes we just made. So uh, I guess that's that. Now we've we've included both environments, and also I said something. Please try to pay attention to grammar. You should not have things like spaces within your allowed host, or otherwise Django is not going to recommend it. So this strictly needs to be in quotes. Now I want to deploy an updated change to the second environment called staging. So let's say we basically have some extra data here called um, data, right? And we're also going to be returning name John Doe, age 30, um, hobbies. No, I do not want hobbies. What should I put? I think uh, profession, or let's say occupation. I think that should be a software engineer, right? I don't get, okay, get, okay, yeah. So I seem to be getting suggestions from GitHub Copilot. So we're going this time around. We're going to be returning message hello world, data, name, age, occupation. So um, it says there's a problem with our script. Okay, I'm missing a comma here. So before I deploy this change to the before I deploy this change to the staging environment, I'm going to go to the production environment, and I just want to be certain our application is working. So I'll open the production URL. Great, we basically have our application running. It says message hello world, and now I'm going to stage my changes, and that will be git add dot, and I could commit them and git commit m. Well, you necessarily do not need to commit these messages. You can just git add. So once you git add, the changes are basically staged. So once you run git add, you can still run eb deploy after. But I'm just gonna commit my. It's 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 good practice if I get to commit everything I've done. So git commit add, added. I could say added user data, and great. So I'm going to deploy my changes, and I'm going to be deploying this to eb deploy, I think, staging. So what this does is it creates a new application revision just like before, and basically the current changes I have on in my application is deployed to the staging environment. So I guess that's how that works. So now, once this gets deployed, I'm going to be going to the, I think, okay, I think we're good. Environment update um, successfully. So in cases where you do not want to keep going back to the AWS management console, okay, something seems to be wrong. Well, we're just going to ignore that for now. So in cases where you do not want to go to the Elastic Beanstalk management console to check your application, you can just run eb open and specify the name of the environment, eb open production. What this is going to do is it's going to basically open a new tab in our Chrome browser with the production environment. So But since I'm kind of more interested in changes I deploy to staging, so I'm going to run eb open staging. So um, that's, I guess that's still in process. So eb open staging. Yeah, I guess that's been opened here. So we can see we have our message, hello world, name John Doe, 30, occupation software engineer. Um, so we we basically have two environments now. We have our production running and our staging. Now, the staging environment basically has our changes and basically the recent changes we made. And we can say that probably in an agile environment or when you're getting to work with cross-functional teams, you might need to send this to QA, to the clients to test, to basically access your new deployments or your new application revision. So let's say we give QA this and they said, okay, we think this application is good, it's ready to ship. You guys can push this to production. So rather than having to redeploy to the production environment, we deployed to a new environment called staging. So we do not want we do not want downtimes right now when we're trying to deploy. So one of the things we can do is we can perform blue-green deployment. So what blue-green deployment basically does is it basically works by swapping alternating servers. So we're swapping the production and the staging servers. So this staging becomes the production, and this production becomes the staging. So this method of deployment is what we call blue-green deployment. So to perform a blue-green deployment in Elastic Beanstalk, you can just go to the environment. When you want to perform a swap here, we can just go to actions and we will swap environments domain. We can select the new environment and then we go on and swap. But one of the things that I kind of want to do is I want to swap from the Elastic Beanstalk CLI. So I do not understand why this is showing a certain out. Okay, environment health transition from OK to severe. 100% of are responding for TTP EX. Okay, um, but it seems every request seems to be working fine. So probably CloudWatch is still trying to access the situation. So now I want to perform my deployment for the CLI. So I'm going to run EB swap. So I'm kind of showing you this because I want you to know that you can basically do everything you need to do with the Elastic Beanstalk CLI. If we probably want to check the health of our staging server, we could run EB health staging and we're basically going to get the health of our staging environment. So now it's basically giving me some data regarding what's wrong. As you can see, my health status is severe. So that might be something that might need to be fixed later, but that's not our focus now. So I'm going to clear this out. So I'm going to run EB swap to swap our environment. So what this basically does is it swaps basically we can specify our environment name, but I'm not going to be doing that since we basically have just two environments. So you can basically I think we should specify EB swap production, right? So what this is supposed to do is it basically swaps um, the C name, which is my server, the domain name for my staging with my production. Now, once the swap is done, the staging environment becomes the production environment, and the production environment becomes the staging environment. It's more like we're trying to change um, where our environment points to. So that's basically that. In cases where you have multiple environments and you run EB swap production, you're first going to get the list of all the environments you have, and you get to select. So as you can see, my dashboard is basically being updated with the staging link. So if you pay attention, you realize this used to be production.eba, but now when you check it now, it becomes staging. So I can basically just open this as you, okay, this should not be, okay, let me see, environment, staging. I guess staging has been swapped with production. Okay, interesting. So the blue-green deployment has been done already. As you can see now, the URL swaps have already been performed. So what that did was the name, the C name here, our staging, our staging domain has been switched to the production environment, and our production environment domain has been switched. So you basically have the same application. You basically have the application running on each of their environments, but what happens is the URL has been switched. So your clients that are basically been using this URL prior to then, they were basically receiving this response, which is basically this old response here. But what we did was we pointed this new domain, we pointed it to the new environment. So that's basically why it's now in the staging environment. So every time users try to access this URL, they access the staging environment, which is the new environment here. So that's basically how a blue-green deployment is done, and that's basically everything. So with that, you can deploy your applications and you can swap with no downtime, and your users don't necessarily have to experience any break. Now, it might not be noticeable now regarding how much of things needs to be done when you're trying to deploy, but in situations where you need to run migrations, I did not run migrations for this project, but there's a part in the documentation that says you could run migrations. So in situations where you basically need to run migrations, you might need to specify some commands, or you might basically have some commands that need to run before the server starts. So it's kind of just cool if you just deploy that to a new environment and you swap. So that's blue-green deployment, and I guess that's just everything. So thank you for joining me here. Even though we kind of have our application LCPC there, we're able to see how blue-green deployment works, and we're able to see our application with two environments get to work and get deployed. So I'm going to be posting more videos on AWS using AWS with Django. I'm going to be posting how to use Python with AWS Lambda, SNS, probably Kinesis data stream, SQS. So you can subscribe to just get notifications when I post these videos. So thank you all for joining me today. Cheers.